Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures podcast. This is episode 258. I am your host, Sean Hayes, and oh boy, folks, I was not expecting Dragonlance content for 5th edition, at least not so soon. Since we've had quite a few Unearthed Arcanas that like delve just everywhere. So we have that was a shocker. So we are going to dig into that for our deep dive. So that our Unearthed Arcana is up on the Wizards of the Coast website, on the D&D website, for people to peruse. And we've got, a couple of pieces of gaming news this week. Hope everyone's doing well. We had a little bit of a teaser of spring that then shifted right back into winter today. So yeah, just we're not happy about that. Point of order, there is no podcast next week, as I will be on vacation. So there will be no podcast. But that following week, we'll be right back at it. So with that, why don't we get right into our news, so that we can eventually get to talking about Dragonlance. All right, hey, it's been a couple of weeks since we had some terrible news about Activision Blizzard, but guess what? So it's not anything new that they did, but it's they are now facing a separate lawsuit filed by the parents of Kerri Moynihan, who was the employee that was described in the sort of large-scale workplace issue lawsuit as the employee that committed suicide as a result of her treatment at the company. So that adds just one more lawsuit for Activision Blizzard to face. My hope is, it's very clear that it was the actions of people at the company, and it was at a company function or a company trip. So hopefully Kerri's parents can certainly get some restitution from the company for that. So yeah, sorry to open things up on a really sad note there. But yeah, and no new information on the sort of larger scale lawsuits. It's still taking forever. It will likely take forever. But yeah, hopefully Activision Blizzard has to really put in the work in the changes. So yeah. Up next, Epic is going to buy Bandcamp. So Bandcamp is a music hosting streaming platform that's very popular with indie performers, has a much better pay rate than Spotify does. And so there's a lot of creators like one Professor Shy Guy, who one of his tracks is the opening theme to this podcast, host their stuff there. I use it a lot, certainly. You can purchase music directly from Bandcamp. So like it has a combination of like hosting the music, streaming the music, as well as like providing a purchase platform for people. I think it's great. Epic has said there are no plans to change any of the functionality, or take away any of the functionality, but they are looking at how to sort of integrate it into their larger structure without compromising quality. Now, we'll see how that pans out, but Yeah. I think it was like to bring like social features and stuff to Bandcamp. Like a little bit more of community features to it. But yeah, so Epic's gonna buy it. Next up, March 10th is Mario Day. So select Mario titles and Mario related titles will be on sale at retailers and on the eShop through March 13th ish. Most of the titles are getting like a $20 discount. Let me see if I can find the full list. Okay, here we go. So Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, Super Mario Maker 2, Luigi's Mansion 3, Yoshi's Crafted World, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, Mario Tennis Aces, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, are all on sale for $40, down from $60. Luigi's Mansion 3 multiplayer DLC pack is down to $7 from $10. Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle is down to $10 from $15+. That is a travesty. Like, that is an absolute travesty. And that just goes to show that, like, there is no reason to buy Ubisoft games at launch. There is zero reason to do that. Like the fact that I got it at launch and it was like a $60 title, and now it's $10. And normally, apparently, it's like regularly $15. So, folks, don't buy Ubisoft games at launch. Wait a couple months, and then you won't have to pay anywhere near full price for them, apparently, because Ubisoft doesn't value their games, I guess. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, $42, down from $60. And Kirby and the Forgotten Land pre-order is $5 off. So there we go. A whole bunch of Mario titles for you. And again, the very short sale. So will likely start tomorrow, or if you're listening to the audio version today, March 10th, and for like a couple of days. So, and again, a lot of the stuff not huge discounts, but I mean it's certainly far more of a discount than we normally see for the games that are being listed there. All right, up next we got an announcement: F-Zero X is coming to the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pack. In a rare moment where Nintendo acknowledges the existence of F-Zero outside of Smash Brothers. So for fans of the series, that'll be on there if you get the expansion pack. So yeah, so for those who are unaware, F-Zero is a sort of high octane racing game that really emphasizes the speed factor on it. And I think there's a little bit of customization on your cars, and it's a lot of different racers that have different stats and everything. Captain Falcon being sort of like an all-arounder, sort of like how Mario is in Mario Kart. But yeah, very much focusing on just how fast can we make this go, and to the point that like when somebody smashes into the wall, they just are pinballing back and forth super fast, and thus creating a hazard on the track. So yeah, no word as to when that is coming, as far as I could tell. So likely in the next month or so. And then, speaking of which, Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp was supposed to come out April 8th. It has been delayed again. No news about an updated release date given. Delayed due to the current the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This is done because the opening of Advance Wars 1 is the Blue Moon Army, which is very clearly modeled after the USSR Army. Like, just straight up invades and tries to conquer neighboring nations. So, Nintendo kind of thought it was a little bit in bad taste to release the game while the war is going on. And so it's sort of delayed until it doesn't feel like it would be in bad taste, I guess. Again, if there is a release date given, we'll certainly report that. But as of right now, there is no new release date. So, I mean, on the other hand, this does give them more time to polish things. So there is that. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's a little too coincidental and on the nose. And whether you think it's performative or not, I mean, take it as they'll get more time to work on it. So, a little bit more time to work on it, if there are any problems. So that is actually going to wrap up our quickfire news for this week. I know the Batman is out. I was trying to see if it was going to come to HBO Max so that I didn't have to go to the movie theater to watch it. That does not appear to be the case. So I will figure that out. I'll try to get Jamal back on, my buddy Jamal, so that we can talk about it. Since we joked about it after our Spider-Man episode. But yeah. I don't have any news concerning that yet. So let us sorry for the long pause. Transition from quickfire news into our deep dive topic of this week. All right. Dragonlance content. Like actual Dragonlance content for 5th edition, not like locked away in a generic book. Unearthed Arcana article titled Heroes of Krynn. So, all in all, there are some mixed feelings about this. I think there's some stuff that they did really well. I think there's some stuff that could use some work. I will definitely be providing feedback on this. There are definitely some passionate folks, let me tell you, who some of my feedback will be like, you better provide sidebars in the book explaining how this functions with the lore, or you are going to get angry folks like yelling at you for how dare you ruin Dragonlance, since that was already happening. But let's get into it. So first up, we have Kender. Kender, a little bit of a controversial take. Not as controversial these days as like gully dwarves, which you can't do. Like, you just can't. Gully dwarves, the whole thing around them, it really kind of leans into a lot of like ableist tropes, and so it really doesn't sit well in this day and age. But that said, so Kender, they get Brave, which is one of the staple things for halflings. And so I think what's interesting is, instead of sort of the idea that Kender are just always stealing things, it's starting at 3rd level. Basically they sort of get like a magician's ability to like pull stuff out of your hat. which I kind of like better. And it, it leans into like the what have you got in your pockets, like, and just I don't know, but it sort of leans into it being like a cartoony thing, of what I believe it's Tales. Tales from the Floating Vagabond has this shtick, which I believe is called the trench coat shtick, but we affectionately used to call it the Yakko's pants effect, for people that are familiar with Animaniacs, where like he reaches into his pockets and everything and just pulls out whatever, or reaches under his hat and pulls out whatever. And so it's as a bonus action, you can reach into any container you're carrying and you roll on the associated table to determine what item you pull out. Driz mentions I've also heard it called hammer space. Hammer space is a little different in that hammer space is basically like an extra dimensional pocket that you pull a specific item out of. This is precisely, it is, you don't know what you're pulling out, or it's either it being random or it being something outlandish. And the more outlandish it is, the more likely you're going to get it. Related though. So in the sense that it's almost like an extra dimensional pocket type space. But yeah, so this, and you get like a temporary item. It disappears after an hour. It glimmers softly. You can use this bonus action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Since Wizards is leaning into that design philosophy now, instead of going with short rests. So some things that you have, 5d6 gold pieces, a simple weapon of your choice that has the light property, an item of your choice from the adventuring gear table in the player's handbook. The item must cost no more than 1 gold piece and weigh no more than a pound. 1 random item from the trinkets table, your choice of a crowbar or a grappling hook. 1 item of your choice from the tools table. The item must cost no more than 10 gold pieces. And again, randomly determined. So it's really like it. I like this ability because it leans sort of into the silliness of it without the implication that Kender are all thieves. Which kind of leaned a little into some problematic stuff. And like, it plays into like nobody knows where these items come from. So I like that. And I like that it's like a magical, that it turns it into a magical phenomena. I think the more D&D kind of leans into that kind of stuff, the better, because it's a fantasy game, and if you want to play a dark, gritty, low magic game, I mean, you can. I think there are better games for that. Now, that said, their next ability is Taunt. I think, so I'm not a fan of this, only because I think this should be an ability that's like in a feat or in a maneuver that like, or something that's tied to an ability that like anybody can do. Just because there seems to be a lack of sort of marking or distracting type things unless you get into like special maneuvers. I would have loved to have seen this tied to a feat as opposed to a magical, like a supernatural ability, because like you can produce this effect without it requiring supernatural magic, which is essentially a bonus action. You unleash a barrage of insults at a creature within 60 feet of you that can hear and understand you. They must make a wisdom saving throw. I'll get to that in a moment. Or it has a disadvantage on attack rolls until the start of your next turn. Again, tied to proficiency bonus times per day. I think this could be a generic thing tied to a feat. And I think it might be a feat that's put out in like a third-party product. Like, I don't know if it's in Star Wars 5e or something. This would be a great thing. And also, if it was not just tied to attack rolls, also tied to ability checks, then it becomes also like a social ability, which, I know I talked about combat in D&D, but I think one of the things that D&D could do better, admittedly, is, for stuff that's explicitly combat, tie some sort of non-combat function to it. And make it so that it's equally useful and valid whether you're using it in combat or out of combat. And I think that makes for more interesting design. So I think, if you certainly do that, especially if you're going to tie it to a specific number of times per day, like, also make it be based on ability checks, like attack rolls or ability checks. Also, I have a problem with the over-reliance on dexterity and wisdom saving throws in the game. And one of my players in particular will agree with me on the lack of charisma-based saving throws, not just because he's playing a bard. But I do think this, I think it would have been better if there was a better delineation of like what particular saving throws covered, especially if you're going to have 6 different ones as opposed to 3. Really define what goes into each one. And I think, because right now charisma saves are largely based on like very mystical effects. So things like Bane, Banishment, although also I think Calm Emotions, whereas, Wisdom saves are against like all charm effects, all hold effects, anything that they base on like your willpower. And dexterity saves are just all over the place. And I don't know if that's just because of the number of exploding type effects. But so number one, I think a better way to define this is, strength saves would be used whenever you are going to be forced to move. Or moved against your will. So things that like would require your physical strength to resist, or things that knock you down. And I think the game could be better at introducing a lot more of those things. So, in this case, things like Thunderwave, I think already does it. But like, like the whatever the tremor spell is, where like it knocks people down. That's another example. Telekinesis could be a strength save. Dexterity should just straight up be avoidance. But also, I feel like there's a lot of dexterity save effects that should just be attack rolls. I think it definitely should be that if you are precisely targeting something, that should be an attack roll, and it's if you are trying to avoid a big old area effect through nimbleness, that should be a dexterity save. Constitution, I think if it affects, basically like if it's something that would make you sick, or affect your body, in such a way, like affect the health of your physical body. Intelligence saves, those are tough. I think illusion, like it's already there with illusions. But I feel like any sort of psychic effects, I feel like should be tied to intelligence saves. If it's going to be like straight up like resisting stuff that would affect your mental health, I guess, to a certain degree. And I'll get into that in a little bit. Wisdom saves, uh, you know, I think wisdom saves should be potentially resisting the mystical effects. So things like banishment, things like bane, um, curses, uh, other effects like that. I think charisma saves should be a reflection of your composure. And so things that like would affect your emotional state, I think should be tied to a charisma save. So in this case, like definitely calm emotions, I think, charm, hold person's a tricky one. I think hold person could stay a wisdom saving throw. But definitely like all the charm stuff. I think vicious mockery should be a charisma save. Anything that's like intended to rattle the target, just should be a charisma save essentially. So that's where I would change that. Yeah, I think I'm not a fan of it being a feature for Kender, just because I want it to be a generic thing. But if they're gonna slap it on Kender, let's also make these changes. Make it a charisma saving throw, and also have it apply to ability checks. Because it's also until the start of your next turn. So like it's for one turn. So yeah. Aside from that, bonus action, great. I like that. I dig that. And I think Kender Aces, which is the ability to just like pull random stuff out, I think it's great. I think that's a great flavor type thing. That could also provide you with like sort of item that you like. I want that to be a thing for artificers, actually. Like to be able to just create a thing on the fly, essentially, like a short-lived item. Now I'm mad that the artificer doesn't get that kind of ability. So yeah. So all in all, a little mixed, but I like the direction that they're going in because it keeps the same sort of charm. And they do explain like that it's due to assumptions and misunderstanding that labels Kender as thieves, but they're not actually thieves. It's they pop it out and they don't know where it comes from. They just find stuff in their pockets. So I like that. And I like that it gives a little bit more. Because, like, let's face it, Dragonlance is kind of a Saturday morning cartoon style D&D campaign. Like, there are very clearly, like, good guys. There are very clearly bad guys. And they are pretty much mustache twirling bad guys. I don't know any, like, aside from the actual D&D Saturday morning cartoon, I don't think you get any more cartoonish than Dragonlance. So I think this ability fits. We do get a subclass. It's not for wizards or paladins or anything like that. It's for sorcerers. We get a lunar magic subclass for sorcerers. This has caused a lot of controversy on Twitter because of the fact that in Dragonlance canon, sorcery from a mechanic standpoint is not tied to the moons. It's tied to like the world, which it has it's called primal sorcery. It's a whole thing to justify like having sorcerers when sort of Dragonlance moved from second edition to third edition, like, and Sorcerers became a thing, they had to figure out, like, oh, how do we have this whole other class of arcane spellcasters that, like, we don't know how it works. Which, like, I don't know, like, they still would have had that problem with bards, but that said, so this is where I think Wizards, if they put a sidebar in that explains and reminds people, Lunar magic sorcerers would just be a specific kind of sorcerer. It's not all sorcerers. And I think there's a lot of folks getting hung up on that. And so having a sidebar that kind of explains that, Fori's Cosmic Sorcerer, yes. This is 100% like Cosmic Sorcerer. It's also Boomkins, for anybody that's familiar with World of Warcraft. The funny thing is, Moonkins being essentially like a druid subclass. But yeah, so it's the features are basically, you have like a full moon state, a new moon state, and a crescent moon state. Every time you finish a long rest, you choose what phase of the moon you're in, and you get a whole bunch of features related to that phase of the moon, including bonus spells. Let's see, bonus spells, different empowering features, a different capstone, and an empowerment of certain types of spells. And I think so they're in the different types of spells are supposed to be tied to each of the three moons in Kryn, which are tied to magic itself. And I think they could do with a tweaking of which schools. And I don't know if they intentionally tweaked it for like balance. Because essentially, quote unquote black magic or magic from New Atari is traditional like enchantment and necromancy or illusion and necromancy, and they made it evocation and necromancy. That is strong. Like, that is very offensive magic. So I think I'd tweak it. So currently it's full moon is abjuration and conjuration. New moon is evocation and necromancy. Crescent moon is divination and transmutation. I would change those up. Have it be abjuration and divination. Enchantment and necromancy, and then illusion and transmutation. And I think that might fit better. That also ties into how it was in third edition. So that will be sort of the feedback that I throw in there when they eventually ask for feedback on this. But yeah, also as a first level feature, you get Sacred Flame. Everybody loves Sacred Flame, and as a bonus to it is you get to hit two things that are next to each other with it. So like, it gives you the benefit of another great cantrip, Acid Splash, but with the benefit of an entirely different cantrip that deals different type, like a better type of damage. So yeah. You eventually get a feature where you can spend a sorcery point to change your moon phase. At later levels, full moon is you shed light. People get advantage on saving throws while in that light. New moon is you get advantage on stealth, and if you're in dim light or darkness, attack rolls have disadvantage against you. And crescent is resistance to necrotic and radiant damage. That I like it. I wish Wizards would put stuff in there to accommodate things that already have those resistances. So for example, if you're playing like an Aasimar, you already have those resistances. And so like Crescent Moon then provides no benefit to you. Because they don't have any rules for stacking resistance or stacking vulnerability. It's just that vulnerability cancels out resistance. It'd be nice to see some wording of, even like not necessarily immunity, but like, do you then like quarter the damage? Or to change it so that it's not you have resistance to necrotic and radiant damage, but you take half damage from necrotic and radiant effects, so that it's functionally resistance, but then it stacks with existing resistances. Capstone is full moon. You can blind people with moonlight and then heal one creature that's in the area. New moon is you emanate oppressive gloom. And so things take necrotic damage, their speed is reduced to 0, you become invisible. And crescent moon is you teleport and gain resistance to all damage. So yeah, I like Lunar Sorcerer. I think Lunar Sorcerer is rad. I think the extra spells that they get are very thematic and they're great. So yeah, I also like the thought of that these are sorcerers that get their power from the moons, which as a very specific kind of sorcery, because it's been established in 5e that sorcerers, like, they cast spells sort of in the same way, but it's more of a catch-all thing for any kind of quote-unquote innate spell casting. But like where they get their spells from is very, very different from one subclass to another. And so I think that's where the argument of like it doesn't fit with the canon begins to break down once you try and fit it into 5th edition. Like are you going to tell me that a shadow magic sorcerer is like drawing their magic from the world of Kryn? Like that completely flies in the lore for the actual subclass, where they explicitly get their magic from like the Shadowfell and Shadow planes. Or Clockwork Sorcerer, like Clockwork Soul, where they get their magic from robots. They get their magic from extraplanar robots. Or Aberrant Mind, like or Dragon Sorcerer, like where you have draconic heritage. And like that would fit more in Dragonlance than like anything else. But at the same time, like it doesn't fit quote unquote with the lore of primal sorcery. So I would say yeah, I don't know. Like cuz all the whole primal sorcery thing came up because they needed some niche for sorcerers to fit into. So they made it part of the story where like wizards lost their magic, and priests and stuff lost their magic, and so it had to come from like within. Like you had to find magic within, and so sorcery came about. But in 3rd edition, you didn't have subclasses, and so there weren't different kinds of sorcerers. It was just like whatever you decided to flavor your sorcery as. But Sorcerer A and Sorcerer B use the same rules. Like you didn't have specific cool subclass stuff to deal with. So yeah, my hope is they include some lore to explain how it fits with Dragonlance. Also, I mean, these people have to realize this is also made so that this subclass can be used seamlessly with other campaign settings. So, they talk about Kryn, but they also talk about Toril, they talk about Eberron and stuff. So like, I mean, you can't make it too weird and too specific to one campaign setting, because then you have to explain how it works with other campaign settings without, kind of retrofitting it. And I feel like this is why Warforged don't appear in the Monsters of the Multiverse book. Which I still argue is a complete oversight, but all right. So, as I said, that's the only subclass in this article. But you might be saying, but Sean, what about the Knights of Solamnia and what about the Wizards of High Sorcery? Like, those are the two biggest things in Dragonlance. Aside from Dragon Riders, like, those are core to what makes Dragonlance Dragonlance. Like, Wizards of High Sorcery is literally at the center point of pretty much the entirety of Dragonlance's whole arc run, if only because of Raceland. So they do this with backgrounds, and I think this is weird, and I don't know how I feel about it. So Knights of Solamnia. Knight of Solamnia is a background. Gives you athletics and survival. I think the survival's a bit weird. I think, history, persuasion probably would have been better. Proficiency with a type of musical instrument. I think that's also a bit weird. One language of your choice. You get a bunch of equipment. And the feature is a Squire of Solamnia, which is it gives you a feat. Now, we started to see this with Strixhaven. I think Strixhaven was a bit of a slippery slope in backgrounds giving people, even if it was a specific feat, because it set a precedent now and especially since it was a feat that was mechanically identical to Arcane Initiate. Because background features are supposed to give you social and role-playing benefits, but not necessarily stuff that gives you a mechanical advantage that can be used like in combat or things like that. We saw it a little bit with Saltmarsh, Ghosts of Saltmarsh too, or I think it was like the Marine. It was something like it gave you a bunch of stuff of like you ignore difficult terrain due to water or something. Like when moving, like it didn't give you a swim speed, but like it allowed you to ignore difficult terrain while wading through water or something like that. And like giving you advantage on saves against forced marches and stuff. But so in addition to that feat, Knights of Solamnia provide you free, modest lodging and food at any of their fortresses or encampments. That's kind of a little bit closer to what we typically get, although I do think that that's boring. So, the big thing I think is, as long as it continues to stay being specific feats that you get for taking these backgrounds, I think it's okay, as long as the feats are done to be specifically for role-playing. So what is the Squire of Solamnia feat do? They do have that in a section here. It gives you... Yeah, see, so here's the thing. So it gives you proficiency with medium armor and martial weapons. You have advantage on saving throws made to avoid falling off of a mount. And when another creature you can see within 30 feet of you makes a saving throw, you can use your reaction to inspire them. They gain advantage on that saving throw. Once you do it, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. That is a lot. So, yeah. I have mixed feelings on it. Like, I think it's great. I think it gives you a whole bunch of stuff. I worry about feature creep, I guess. Like, I would have loved to have seen more, again, like social and role play features introduced, than just like, you get more shiny toys to use for combat. And note, also, because it gives you that stuff, it opens it up so that any class can become a Knight of Solamnia. So this gets into some tricky stuff with the lore, where traditionally it was, basically paladins. Actual paladins were rare in Krynn, and most of the time they were like fighters or clerics or fighter clerics. But this introduces like barbarians or College of Valor bards being Knights of Solamnia. And so I think it's just like, when you think of a Knight of Solamnia, you think of plate armor, big ol' spear, or sword and shield. They swear oaths. They get powers based on the oath and the measure. And so, I think it's gonna, have to provide some examples, I think, in whatever book they decide to put out, of like, especially like what sort of orders you might find these other classes in. It also makes it weird because, like, technically you could be a wizard, since that feat gives you proficiency with medium armor and all martial weapons. It does not give you proficiency with shields, so that is interesting. But yeah, you could totally be a wizard and become a Knight of Solamnia, and that does some weird things with the lore. So that, like, I mean, your group could do it. And ultimately, whatever campaign you want to run in Dragonlance, like, it's yours to do with as you see fit. I think there's going to be a lot of folks who have been wanting to play Dragonlance, who are going to kind of recoil a little bit from this stuff. So yeah, I think I would have preferred Knight of Solamnia as like, or various archetypes of Knights of Solamnia as specific subclasses, I think, as opposed to doing it as a background. I think this is a cheeky way of getting around the whole multi or generic subclass thing that they tried to do with Strixhaven and nobody liked. But yeah, so that's that's the Knight of Solamnia. And then there are also other feats for the various orders. Mage of High Sorcery does a similar thing. Arcana and History, 2 languages of your choice, starting gear. The feature is you get the Initiate of High Sorcery feat. And again, the Mages of High Sorcery provide you with free, modest lodging and food indefinitely at any occupied Tower of High Sorcery, and for 1 night at the home of an organization member. Okay, yeah, so you can stay at the Tower of High Sorcery as long as you need to, or an organization member will put you up for a night. So, Initiate of High Sorcery. So you pick one of the moons, which that's normal. You get a cantrip and you get a first level spell. You can cast the chosen first level spell without a spell slot once per day. And you can cast it with any spell slots that you have. Again, I think they need to tweak the types of spells. Just because Solinari or white robed wizards are supposed to be like good are good aligned wizards. Abjuration or conjuration. Abjuration is definitely up there. I think divination would be a better fit. Lunatari gets divination or transmutation. I think illusion or transmutation would be a better fit. And then Nuatari or black robed wizards. Lunatari being red robed wizards. It's supposed to be like neutral wizards. Black robed wizards, evil wizards. Necromancy, right up there. Instead of evocation, I think enchantment would be a better fit, especially given how seemingly the community feels. Like the public perception of enchantment is bad. I think enchantment and charm in particular, I think gets overblown as to what it can actually do. Since due to a lot of things sort of treating, like a lot of shows sort of being a little looser with the rules, treat charm as basically like low level mind control, and it's really not. But and leaving evocation be open to everybody. Or putting it on equal, like put evocation and conjuration on equal footing for everyone. And it's a choice of one of the cantrips. Like it's not just pick any cantrip you want. And interestingly enough, not just wizard spells. Black robed wizards can get vicious mockery. White robed wizards can get spare the dying. So kind of clutch for wizards. In addition to that, they then have at 4th level, you can then become like an adept or a member of one of the Slamming Knight orders. So the only thing that I don't like is they have Knight of the Crown, Knight of the Sword, and Knight of the Rose all as options. Typically, Knight of the I think Knight of the Sword was more for the warriors in the Solamnic Knights. Knight of the Crown was more of the spellcasters. And then Knight of the Rose was not on equal footing, at least for a long time. I don't know if they later changed that, and so that all three are on equal. Knight of the Rose was originally like the upper echelons, so that like you were a member of one of the other orders, and then you became, and then like you could be initiated into the Knights of the Rose if you were virtuous enough and proved you had the leadership capabilities. So that's the only. So unless they're going to go back, or if later on they sort of bump down the Knight of the Rose status. But I do think, we are starting to see a little bit of a return to the feat trees. Strixhaven had one where it's like 4th level. You had to have some other feat. Again, very wary of going back that route. I did like feats not requiring other feats to have. But yeah. So one of the things I do like, Knight of the Sword, Knight of the Rose, hit die mechanics. More hit die mechanics. We need them. D&D does not do anything with hit dice. And they have a whole thing, like a whole set of mechanics, just like Inspiration, and ideals, bonds, flaws, and traits. Whole set of mechanics that they put in the book and then didn't do anything with. Could also be argued to a certain extent of like actually utilizing downtime. And like you could have a whole there should be a book on how to actually run downtime, because I can tell you right now that is territory for how D&D could expand out from just being viewed as like a tabletop combat game, by more fleshing out downtime, especially since downtime is largely not tied to class, not tied to class features. And so, yeah, just having like Xanathar, so Xanathar's fleshed it out a little bit, but I mean like a whole book devoted to how to do downtime. Because like if done right, you could do a whole session of downtime and everybody walks away satisfied, like with how that session, like with how a session went, and like nobody's like sitting around being like, oh, I'm bored. So yeah. But also to get back on track, hit dice, yes. So Knight of the Sword has one where if you or a creature you can see fails a Wisdom, Charisma saving, fails a Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma saving throw, you can spend the hit die, like you can spend a hit die and add that amount, turning potentially turning a failure into a success. And it's once you turn a failed saving throw into a successful one, you can't use it again until you finish long rest. I think. Wait, does it require a reaction? No. Okay. All right. I was going to say, like, I feel like also requiring a hit die, you can kind of remove the long rest portion of it, because, like, hit dice, there is currently no way to regain hit dice outside of finishing long rests. So that is inherently a limited resource. I would say you could do that restriction if there was actual ways to like regain more hit dice through the course of an adventuring day. But yeah, I think without requiring a reaction, maybe I'm fine with the limiting factor. I would how I would do this ability is require reaction, expending a hit die, leaving it at that. And then the Knight of the Rose is when you roll initiative, you can choose up to 3 other creatures you can see. You roll your hit die, you add your proficiency bonus, and the ability score modifier of the score used when you boost, or the ability score increased by that feat, which is either Constitution or Charisma. And those creatures get temporary hit points equal to that amount. I dig that. I like it. Again, proficiency bonus times per day. So the adepts is you get a 2nd level spell of your choice. It restricts what schools you can learn it from. You can cast that spell without a spell slot once per day. And then there's like a secondary option. So Black Robe Wizards can channel their life force, expend a number of hit dice equal to the level of the spell. When a creature you can see within 60 feet fails a saving throw against a spell you cast, you can roll a number of hit dice, and you increase the damage. Roll a number equal to half the number expended. And the creature takes extra damage equal to the amount rolled. So again, hit dice mechanics, cool. Red Robe Wizards. When you make an attack roll, ability check, or save throw, you can use reaction to treat a 9 or lower as a 10. That seems good. Because it's basically the rogue ability for everything. It does require your reaction, and It's based on proficiency bonus. And then White Robe Wizards, you can use your reaction to expend a spell slot. We have protective magic around the target. D4 is equal to level of spell slot expended. When somebody would take damage, reduce the damage it takes by the total rolled in those dice, plus your spellcasting ability modifier. I dig that. I like that. Also, we see a return of... Oh, this is interesting. So we do see a return of alignment with the Adept of the White Robes and Adept of the Black Robes. None for Adept of the Red Robes. That's a bit weird, because like the whole thing with Dragonlance is White Robes good, Red Robes neutral, Black Robes evil. And instead now it's any non-good, any non-evil, and just anything. So I don't know. I think if you're going to do that, why have it at all as a requirement? Like either go all in or find some other way to do it, maybe including ideals, bonds, flaws, whatever. Or not have it as a requirement for the feat, because everybody's just going to hand wave that. So then like it doesn't matter. So yeah, there's also Divinely Favored, which is kind of Magic Initiate, but it gives you a little bit of like Divine Soul Sorcerer. That can be upgraded as well. It gives you Thaumaturgy and then a bunch of spells based on your alignment. So for good, you get Cleric or Wizard. Evil, you get Warlock or Wizard. And neutral, you get Druid or Wizard. And you can use a Holy Symbol for any spell you cast using the spellcasting ability you choose when you select this feat. Oh. That's interesting. Okay. So yeah, so you pick Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma for your spellcasting ability. So likely if you're already a spellcaster, you'll probably pick whatever your primary spellcasting ability is. So that means that you can just use a holy symbol in place of like a wand or a staff or something. So you could be a wizard that uses a holy symbol. So you could be a warlock that uses a holy symbol. So yeah, all in all, I think the feats are a little weird. They certainly have mechanics that I like. I just there's some stuff that that I think lore wise needs to be a little fleshed out. And of course, everybody's kind of bent out of shape of like the fact that Weiss and Hickman aren't listed as authors on like this specific article. So I don't know. Maybe more of burning hit dice to fuel spells for Dark Sun Defiling Magic. Defiling Magic's a little weird because Defiling Magic for Dark Sun is you don't burn your hit dice. It would be like you drain those hit dice out of things around you. Because the whole point of that is arcane magic is environmental, is like an environmental disaster. But it's Dark Sun's lore is complicated because it's like we are killing off the world to stave off genocidal warfare. It's really what it boils down to. and like the secrets to defiling magic are only known to a very select few people who are then trying to combine it with other magic to become dragons because they want power. But yeah, it's all complicated, and it's basically just like every decision we make is bad because it has to be bad because we're trying to stave off something worse. So yeah, and that's the official lore is yeah. So I won't get into that on stream because wanted to do more Dragonlance. Uh, but yeah, and especially since a little sad that we don't see anything with ogres because ogres are a big part of Dragonlance. It's like we already have all the elves. We've already got the stuff for dwarves. Tinker gnomes, that's literally just rock gnomes. So we have Kender. I'm trying to think of what else. Like we already have goblins. We already got orcs. Although I don't even think orcs show up all that much in Krynn. We've got Minotaur. So all it leaves is like ogres and Urda. Draconians, which they do talk about in Fizbins. Sort of. Just because specifically stuff for Draconians, like it would have been nice to see those as it would have been nice to see Draconians actually built out as Dragonborn options. Just because of like the death throws are very different than the breath weapons. But I personally think that's like easy to do. I think that's easy to build out. And once you get past that, like that's it. My hope is that there's some sort of dragon riding type stuff. I mean, yeah. So the issue is death throws for PCs. Usually, death throws in Draconians means that like you cannot be raised from the dead because you have no body left. Is like if you play a Bozak Draconian, you blow up. But I think you could come up with something that is thematically similar that doesn't require you like ripping up your character sheet if you reach 0 hit points. So yeah, I don't know. Like instead of a breath weapon, have it be like for Bozaks, like that you you cause an explosion around you. Or like essentially for you to like choose to use that ability. And it's not just like and that could be a play into being a player character, I guess. All right. So anyway, again, I think it's a mixed bag personally of this Dragonlance UA. I think there's a lot of good stuff in here. I think Lunar Magic Sorcerer is fantastic. And I think people that are upset about it are not thinking clearly about what it means to be a sorcerer, which is, it doesn't mean anything because there's so many different kinds of sorcerers. I think the Knight of Solamnia and Mage of High Sorcery are weird. I feel like they could have just made more subclasses. So I don't know. But we'll see. I mean, let's put it this way. There was a lot of changes that went into the Strixhaven UA before it went to print. So I feel like this is probably going to be the same thing. And the myriad of changes that I mentioned to the Kender Taunt ability. But absolutely, do more stuff like Kender Ace, where it's you just reach into a bag, you pull out a random thing. May or may not be useful, but you can certainly make it useful. I want more stuff like that. So that is going to round out our episode for this week. Thank you all for joining me. As I said, no podcast next week. I will be on vacation. But thank you all for joining, whether you watch live or you listen to the audio version. If you want to see more content from 8-Bit Adventures, you can check out my website at 8-bitadventures.com. If you would like to help support both the 8-Bit Adventures comic as well as this podcast and other podcasts that I've done in the past, you can become a patron over at patreon.com/8bitadventures. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, and you get early access to comics. You get behind the scenes content for D&D. There are some patron exclusive comics there, featuring my super cute fluffy dog. So very exciting. And it's 20% of the cost of a Twitch subscription. So, shout out, thank you to all of my patrons, as well as my Twitch subscribers. Thank you for keeping all this stuff afloat. Finally, our opening theme is One Up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his work over at the aforementioned professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. He's got great stuff over there. A lot of chiptune, both original and covers. And so, oh geez, yeah, no time for Questlog. No time for Questlog this week. So, that said, it is getting late. I gotta still edit this episode. So, thank you all for joining me. It's always a pleasure having you here. And as always, have fun, happy gaming, and enjoy your pie cake.